Newcastle, Gray Street, a Saturday morning in October 2023. Move along, sir, the officer said. No permit for this stretch. You'll have to pack up. The old man looked at him, said nothing, started folding his guitar case. Across the street, in the window of a café, Mark Knopfler set his cup down. He knew that posture. He knew the way those hands moved. He'd watched them from 10 feet away for 20 years. He was already pushing his chair back. Mark had come into Newcastle early. Nothing specific. An old friend for dinner the night before, a hotel, a Saturday morning with no fixed point. He'd walked to Gray Street and found a cafe and ordered eggs and read the paper. The paper ran out. He ordered another coffee. He was looking at the street. That was when he heard the guitar through the window glass. He hadn't looked up immediately. He'd listened first. An old chord sequence. Familiar but unnamed. Something between songs. The kind of playing that isn't performing. Finding something by accident, following where it goes, not knowing the destination. Musicians at rest. He'd looked up across the street. A man on a folding stool. 70-ish. A battered acoustic guitar. Case open on the pavement, a few coins in it already. A woolen hat pulled low against the October cold. A jacket that had been a good jacket once. Mark had looked at the hands. At the right hand above the strings. The wrist angle. The specific way the fingers moved. He knew those hands. He'd worked 10 feet from those hands for 20 years. Alan Dunn was 70 years old. He'd joined the Dire Straits touring band in October 1978. A phone call on a Tuesday. The original second guitarist had broken his wrist 3 days before the first date of the European leg. Someone had said, "Call Alan Dunn. He can learn anything overnight." Alan was a session player. He could learn anything in a day and play it like he'd always known it. He'd stayed for 20 years. Not the plan. Just what happened. 6 world tours. 42 countries. Night after night, 10 feet to the left of Mark Knopfler, learning the songs from the inside in a way you can't learn from any recording or transcript or transcription. From the inside. He'd retired in 1998. A right knee that had been operated on twice and was asking not to be operated on a third time. And a decision. A life in Newcastle that had been patient long enough. Sandra had been patient long enough. 2 kids who'd grown up mostly in photographs. He'd taught guitar for 10 years after. A small school on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Weekend workshops for intermediates and beginners. He'd been good at it. He'd liked it more than he'd expected. The students reminded him of himself at 16. The hunger, the wrong technique, the belief that getting it faster was getting it better. Then Sandra's illness had needed most of his time. 3 years of it. At the end, all of it. Then the illness had taken Sandra, and the teaching room had too many chairs in it. He kept going for a year. Then he stopped. The students needed someone who was fully there. He wasn't fully there, so he busked. Saturday mornings only. Gray Street mostly. The quayside sometimes if the wind was right. He didn't need the money. The tours had been generous. He'd been careful with it. The pension was fine. He needed the guitar in his hands. He needed the October air and people walking past who weren't. Listening and the sound going somewhere. Instead of staying in the room where Sandra used to sit in the chair by the window and listen and tell him what she thought. He'd been playing for 40 minutes when the officer appeared. Kyle Briggs, 23 years old. 6 months in the job. He'd wanted to work outdoors. The schedule rotated. This was his Gray Street Saturday. He was good at it. Polite. Thorough. He didn't enjoy moving people on. He did it properly. He always checked before approaching. He gave people time to respond. He didn't raise his voice. He checked the map on his device. This stretch of Gray Street, no designated busking permit. Clear on the map. He walked over. He was polite about it. He was sorry. Rules were rules. He was telling the truth on all 3 counts. Alan looked at him. 68 years of guitar in those hands. He'd played for presidents and empty pubs and 500,000 people and a woman in a hospital bed who couldn't open her eyes anymore. He'd played in the rain in Auckland and the heat in Kuala, Lumpur and a soundcheck in Hamburg when the Electricity went out and they'd played acoustic in the dark for 2 hours, and it was the best show of any tour he could name. Now, a 23-year-old on a Saturday route was asking him to move along. He said, "All right, son." He meant it. No resentment. The boy was doing the job he was given. Alan had spent 20 years watching road crew and venue security doing exactly that. You didn't make their job harder. He started folding the case. Slowly. The knee made kneeling difficult now. Across the street, Mark had already put money on the table. He was at the café door before he'd consciously made the decision. The decision had made itself. Have you ever watched someone pack away something precious because someone with a clipboard told them to, and known, before you'd thought it through, that you weren't going to let that be the end of the story? Tell me in the comments, because what happened next on Gray Street stopped 6 people on their way to work. Mark crossed the road, not fast, not dramatically, just crossing a road, the October air, the sound of the guitar already gone. Kyle saw him coming, a man in a blue denim shirt, sleeves rolled despite the cold, who wore their sleeves rolled in October, crossing toward them with an unhurried purpose that wasn't in a hurry because it was certain. Alan had the case half closed. He heard the footsteps, different from passers-by, coming toward him rather than past him. He looked up, and there was the face that had been 10 feet to his right for 20 years. 30 seconds of 2 men looking at each other on a Newcastle pavement. 25 years since they'd last been in the same room. Mark looked older. Alan knew he did too. They were both the age now that they'd thought of as old when they were the ages they used to be. "Al," Mark said. Alan stood up from the stool. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "I wondered when you'd walk past." Mark looked at the guitar. "What were you playing just now?" "The sequence before he stopped you." "Something," Alan said. "Nowhere yet." "Just following it, I know," Mark said. He looked at Kyle. Kyle was watching both of them. "Is there a permit situation we can sort?" Kyle looked at his device. "Designated busking areas are on the map, sir." "This stretch? What if we're both playing?" Mark said. He wasn't being difficult, genuinely asking. "Does that change the category?" Kyle looked at his screen. He looked at the 2 men. I'd need to check that." "Check it," Mark said. He sat down on the curb beside Alan's folding stool, not performing the gesture, just sitting. He looked at the guitar in Alan's case. "May I?" Alan handed it over. Mark held it. "Press the G string, out by a fraction." He tuned it. Pressed the sequence Alan had been playing. Found where it was going. Kyle was looking at his screen. He wasn't finding the answer. He was stalling because something was happening on this pavement that his training hadn't covered. A woman had slowed on the opposite pavement. A man with a coffee cup had stopped. A teenager on his way somewhere had stopped being on his way somewhere. Mark started to play. Not Alan's sequence. Something else. A melody that hadn't existed 30 seconds ago and now did. Slow. Gray Street tempo. The left hand finding chords that weren't quite chords. Something between chords. Something still deciding what it was. Alan was watching his hands. The specific way the left thumb moved. The wrist angle. 10 feet, 20 years, 42 countries. He knew those hands the way you know a face. He reached into the case-lid pocket. The spare harmonica. Always there. He took it out. Found the key from 2 notes Mark played. Put it to his lips. And they were playing. Mark on guitar. Alan on harmonica. Gray Street, October, a Saturday morning in 2023. Something that had no title and didn't need one. The melody going somewhere slow and certain. The way all good things go. Not hurrying, knowing where it was going, getting there in its own time. Kyle had stopped looking at his device. 3 more people slowed on the pavement. Then stopped. A man with a delivery trolley who set it against the wall. A woman who had been speaking on her phone and was no longer speaking. 2 teenagers who were supposed to be somewhere else. The October air. The old Georgian stone of Gray Street above them. The sound bouncing off the sandstone and coming back slightly warmer than it left. Kyle put the device in his pocket. Made a note. Reviewed. No further action required. Then watched. He stood and listened for 4 minutes. Nobody was paying him any attention. He was glad of it. He'd stopped people from doing things he hadn't understood before, and he'd understood them afterward. This was the first time he'd understood it while it was happening. When the last note faded, the small crowd on the pavement did what small crowds do when something unexpected has just been generous to them. They clapped. Properly. The delivery man, trolley still in hand. The woman who'd ended her call. The teenager who'd been on his way somewhere. Kyle looked at his device again. He found the designated busking permit section. He looked at the map. He looked at the pavement. He made a note on his device. Reviewed incident. No further action required. He walked on. Mark handed the guitar back. He stood up from the curb and brushed off his trousers. He looked at Alan. "You stopped teaching," he said. It wasn't a question. "Sandra," Alan said. The one word. Mark nodded. He looked at the guitar case. At the few coins from the 40 minutes before Kyle arrived. At the folding stool. At the October sky above Gray Street. "Come and play something," Mark said. Not asking, just saying what came next. "I'm working on something. Another guitar in the room would help. Tuesday, my studio in London." Alan looked at him. 25 years. Sandra. The teaching room with too many chairs in it. Gray Street Saturdays. "What time?" He said. 10, Mark said. "You still drink tea?" Something moved on Alan's face. Not quite a laugh. "Close to 1. Coffee? Changed about 15 years ago." "Right." Mark looked at the guitar. "At the case. At October. Tuesday. I'll sort you a train. No more needed saying." The things that needed saying had been said in the harmonica and the guitar and 4 minutes on a pavement. He crossed back over Gray Street. Went back into the café. The same table. His eggs were cold. He ordered another coffee. He picked up the paper but didn't read it. Through the window, he watched Alan fold the stool. Tuck it under his arm. Pack the guitar into the case with the care you use with something you love. Clip the clasps. Both of them. He bent down carefully at the knee and stood up straight. He was smiling. The particular smile of someone who has just remembered something they'd let themselves forget was still available to them. Alan. Dunn played with Mark Knopfler on a Tuesday in October 2023, a studio in London. They worked from 10 in the morning until dark. Coffee went cold. Nobody checked the time. What they made that day may or may not have ended up anywhere. That isn't the point. The point is that the guitar was under Alan's hands again in a room where it meant something. The point is that they played until dark and neither of them said they should stop. Alan drove back to Newcastle that night. The A1 at 10 o'clock, quiet. He didn't turn the radio on. He didn't need it. The studio was still in his hands. His fingers still knew the shapes from the afternoon. He'd play them again when he got home. Quietly. Not to remember. They were already remembered. Just to have them again. He had Sandra's chair at home. He'd sit in the one opposite. The one he always sat in when she was there. He had Tuesday. The following Saturday he was back on Gray Street. Same stool, same case. Different permit. He'd sorted one on Monday morning. The pitch was his from 8:30 to 11. The man at the permits office had asked what he played. He'd told him. The man had asked what style. Alan had said fingerstyle, blues, a bit of everything. The man had nodded, like that was a sufficient answer. It was Kyle Briggs was on the same route the following Saturday. He saw the old man at the pitch, the folding stool, the case with the few coins in it already. He nodded. Alan nodded back. Kyle kept walking. He reached the corner of Gray Street and turned. Then stopped. He could still hear the guitar from here. Just the October wind carrying it down the street. He stood there for longer than he needed to. A man on his way to work walked around him, slightly annoyed. Kyle didn't notice. He was listening, then he walked on. He had the rest of his route. He did it. He was professional about it. He moved 2 more people on and checked 4 permits and wrote his notes. But at the end of his shift, sitting in his van filling out the paperwork, he found himself writing more slowly than usual. He was thinking about the pavement, the guitar, and the harmonica. the delivery man who had set his trolley against the wall, the particular way the sound had moved down Gray Street in the October air. He'd made a note on his device. No further action required. That was right. That was what it had been. He drove home and told his flatmate about it. His flatmate didn't know who either of them were. Kyle tried to explain. He couldn't find the right words. But he kept trying. He wanted to get it right. If there's someone from your past you lost touch with, and you've been wondering whether it's too late, tell us in the comments. And if you believe 25 years is never too long, subscribe. We'll see you on Gray Street.